Yeah. Ay, 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 ay. Whoa. If the real talk gets in hot, bring it up. If the lies need sunlight, bring it up. Cause every night we talk love and then we talk lies, then we laugh. Then we open your eyes. If it's messy but it's funny, bring it up. If it's sweet but it's shady, bring it up. Cause every night we talk love and then we talk lies. Real talk in our Cayman tonight.
Can you hear me now? Can anyone hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can anyone hear me now? Oh my God. All right, so I'm getting all the messages saying that you guys can hear me. If you guys can hear me, please. I've been talking for the past what is it? Almost 20 minutes past the hour. Oh my God. I do apologize, folks, for this. I feel like I have to start all over again. All right, thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. All right, so as I was saying, God, do I just start the whole thing over? All right, we'll just start the whole thing over. I guess if we go into overtime, we go into overtime. You're tuned into Real Talk, Love and Lies, the late night space where we put love, lies, and all the messy in between on the table. I'm your host, Alfred, and my other co-hosts are you, the listeners. Your stories are what give this show its pulse. Yeah, I'm getting the messages coming in. Everyone's messaging me. So yeah, your stories are what give this show its pulse. So pull up, get comfortable, pour yourself something nice, light up your special something, put those headphones in, or turn me down low if the kids are still awake, and settle in. Tonight we're getting into it. This is Real Talk, Love and Lies, and we're just getting started. If you want to keep the conversation going after the show, I want you to scan the QR codes on the screen. Follow us on Instagram, and join the Real Talk WhatsApp news channel for the topic drops, episode updates, and the spicy questions before we go live. And if you've been living under a rock the last couple of years and you still don't follow them, go fix that right now. Follow Cayman Mall Road, Cayman's #1 source for fast news, real talk, and all the Cayman happenings before your group chat even wakes up. Quick disclaimer before we get into it. The content you're about to hear, including discussions and opinions from myself, my guests, and participants, is intended solely for general informational and entertainment purposes. I'm not a therapist, a lawyer, a doctor, or a financial advisor, and nothing said on this show should be taken as professional advice. It is not a substitute for counseling, legal guidance, medical care, or financial consultation. If you have specific concerns, I strongly encourage you to seek advice from a qualified professional. Real Talk, Love and Lies disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken based on the information shared here tonight. We're here for honest conversation, respectfully shared, and any resemblance to real people is purely coincidental. Though, if something tonight felt a little too familiar, maybe don't ask who we were talking about. Just ask why your name crossed your own mind. Before we get into tonight's trouble, I need to tell you all something. I got a new microphone and I got a soundboard. So now I can finally do all the little noises Sandra does and has been showing off with, especially this one. Yeah, I have that one now, and I already know I'm going to abuse it. I'm still learning the board, so if I hit the wrong button tonight and somebody gets applause in the middle of a serious confession, just bear with me. I'm new to this level of power. And for those of you who want to call in and tell your story, but you don't necessarily want the whole island recognizing your voice by sentence number 2, I got something for you too.
A voice anonymizer. So you can call in, tell us exactly what happened, keep the details juicy, and still remain a little mysterious.
Very late night, very secretive. So yeah, I'm going to have some fun with this soundboard going forward. Probably too much fun. I'm still figuring out where everything is, so I beg your patience with me. But one thing is certain, Sandra and Sabrina are no longer the only ones at the kaboom. And that, my friends, may be terrible for all of us. So tonight's topic, again, I do apologize for the technical difficulties I was having. Have you ever watched someone get uglier right in front of you without one single thing changing about their face? They have the same face and body and smile that had you interested in the first place. The same pictures that made you stop scrolling and go, But after you spend some time with them, something starts happening. You're sitting there looking at the exact same person thinking, what happened? Physically, nothing happened. The face is still facing, technically. But it isn't facing like it was an hour ago. And I think most of us have experienced this. You meet someone and they're gorgeous. Beautiful teeth. They smell good. They're dressed well. The body is doing what the body is supposed to do. Then the conversation starts. And somewhere between the appetizer and the entree, the attraction has packed a little bag and left the building. Something happened to your experience of the person. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. Because we spend a lot of time talking about what creates attraction. Looks, confidence, sex appeal, charm, money, humor, mystery, how you dress, how you smell, how you flirt. There are whole industries built around teaching us how to become more attractive. But we don't talk nearly enough about the things we do that quietly make people want us less. And sometimes the person doing it has absolutely no idea. They think they're being one thing, but you experience them as something else. Now, Robert Greene talks about this in his book, The Art of Seduction. He calls certain people anti-seducers. These are people whose behaviors actually repel other people. And Greene has names for them. And as I was reading it, I kept thinking, yeah, I know that person. And then I thought, I've probably been that person too. And that's where tonight's going to get a little uncomfortable. Because this episode would be very easy if all we were doing was identifying terrible people we dated. Everybody loves that game. Oh, my ex was definitely this one. Oh, well, that sounds exactly like him. Trace will send this episode to her. Before you share the link to anybody, make sure you listen to the whole show, because some of this might belong to you. I know some of it belongs to me. Almost everyone has probably done something at some point that made them less attractive to someone they cared about. You can still acknowledge that someone is beautiful and no longer want them anywhere near you. Right? We have a saying here, my spirit just doesn't take to them. So I want you to do something before we go any further tonight. Think about the last person you genuinely lost attraction to. Not somebody you never liked. Someone you did want. Someone you were excited about. Maybe you couldn't wait for their message. Or you like seeing their name come up on your phone. Or you loved being around them. Or maybe there was a point where you could barely keep your hands off each other. And then something changed. What was it? Did they physically change? Or did being around them start making you feel different? Did you start feeling crowded, judged, taken for granted, embarrassed, bored, like you were always explaining yourself, like everything you said might become an argument? Maybe sometimes when we say, I just lost attraction, there was actually a story underneath it. Something had been happening. Maybe desire didn't disappear for no reason. Maybe it was responding. And tonight, I want to figure out what it was responding to. I think an interesting question to keep in the back of our minds as we go through this episode. What do we do, sometimes even without realizing it, that makes somebody stop wanting us? So let's see. We have some comments. Oh, I guess these are all the comments now saying that I'm good to go. The audio is back on. Thank you guys so much for your patience. I really couldn't do this without you guys. So I want to start with Greene's first anti-seducer. And this one is called The Brute. Now, let me just do a quick check because I just changed scenes. I want to make sure everyone can hear me. If you can hear me, please drop me a message or drop me an emoji a comment or something so that I know that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes? I'm going to assume that you can, and I'm just going to continue. So, after reading about the first Anti-Seducer, the brute, Greene, I find, is on fairly solid ground with the behavior that he describes, but I would challenge some of the psychology he assigns to it. You see, the brute is basically the person who treats attraction like a destination they're entitled to reach, rather than an experience two people are creating together. Their defining trait isn't really roughness, but it's an impatience combined with self-focus. They want the kiss now. They want the sex now. They want the commitment now. They want the reply now. They want the reassurance now. And if the other person needs more time, more comfort, more trust, or just simply isn't moving at the same speed, they experience that delay almost as an inconvenience. And that's where Greene's observation is useful. Patience communicates consideration. Not because playing hard to get is inherently seductive, but because being able to tolerate another person's pace tells them, I'm aware that there are two people here. The brute's attitude is closer to, I know what I want. Why are you making this difficult for me? That can kill attraction very quickly, because desire usually needs some degree of freedom. The moment someone starts feeling pressured to produce affection, sex, attention, or commitment on demand, what might have felt exciting starts feeling like an obligation. There's also a broader version of the brute that goes beyond sex. You meet someone on Saturday. By Monday, why didn't you text me this morning? Wednesday, so what are we? And by Friday, you get a message like, well, you clearly aren't serious about me. Nothing has necessarily gone wrong here. The relationship simply hasn't had enough time to become what they already want it to be. And there's an uncomfortable truth in Greene's description. Some people mistake your attraction to them for permission to disregard your boundaries. You like me, so why won't you come over? You kissed me, so why are you stopping now? You said you missed me, so why don't you want to see me tonight? That's not seduction anymore. That's somebody using evidence of your interest as leverage against your right to change pace. Now, I wouldn't automatically accept Greene's claim that beneath this behavior is a gnawing sense of inferiority, if I'm quoting him, quote unquote. Maybe that's the case. But then again, that's classic Greene. He often sees an underlying psychological wound and presents it as though it explains the type universally. Impatience can come from insecurity. It can come from someone terrified of rejection, and that person may want to secure the relationship quickly because uncertainty makes them anxious. But it can also come from entitlement, or poor emotional regulation, or lack of empathy, or cultural ideas about masculinity and conquest, or simply a person who has learned that persistence usually gets them what they want. And sometimes somebody moves quickly because they're genuinely enthusiastic. The speed itself isn't the problem. You can have two people who meet, become intensely attracted, they sleep together immediately, they spend every day together, and be perfectly happy. The problem arises when one person's pace becomes a demand placed upon the other person. And I'd also question Greene's little test that he uses. He has this test where he says, make them wait and see what happens. There is something useful there, but deliberately playing games with people can create the very insecurity you're supposedly testing for. I think a better real world version would be, set a normal boundary and watch what happens. I can't see you tonight. Or I'm not ready for that yet. I need some time to think. I'm going home. A healthy person might be disappointed. That's fine. The revealing part is whether disappointment turns into guilt tripping, anger, sulking, pressure, insults, punishment, threats to withdraw affection, or suddenly questioning how much you care about them. That tells you considerably more than artificially making someone wait. And there's probably a very useful underlying principle here for the eventual outcome. One of the fastest ways to become unattractive is to make another person feel that your desire has become their obligation. Attraction can survive eagerness. It can even survive awkwardness. What it struggles to survive is the feeling that I am supposed to cater to you when you want it. Now, what I'd like for you to do is I want you to imagine you've been dating someone for 3 weeks. You genuinely like them. They ask you, so what are we? You say, I like where this is going, but I want to take my time. And they respond with, I'm too grown for games. Now, you weren't playing a game, you were taking your time. That's where the brute can become exhausting. They start treating your pace as evidence of how much you care. If you really liked me, you'd make time. If you wanted me, you wouldn't keep saying no. If you were serious, you'd know what you want by now. And it can happen sexually too. Somebody says no, and the person technically accepts it, but they roll over, they go cold, they stop talking, and they begin to withdraw their affection. The word no was accepted, but the person who said it still got punished. And after enough of those experiences, intimacy stops feeling spontaneous. You start calculating consequences, and that's a terrible ground for desire and attraction. So, what I would do, I want you to ask yourselves the harder question. When somebody doesn't give me what I want, how do I behave? Because as I said, a lot of these things we do and we don't even realize we're doing it. Do I respect their pace? Do I start bargaining when I don't get what I want? Do I become cold? Do I keep pushing? Do I turn my feelings into proof that they've done something wrong? Because you can want someone intensely, you can be bold, and you can pursue them, but the other person still has to feel free. So here's the question I want to put to everybody. When does persistence stop being attractive and start becoming pressure? All right, let's see here. Sam Kincaid says, applying too much pressure can come across as aggressive. I'm going to use my kaboom button now. Yeah, and you know, talking about pressure coming across as aggressive, right? The brute pushes really hard from one direction, but Greene's next type can overwhelm you from another. This type is called the suffocator. So the suffocator is the person whose feelings seem to arrive before the relationship has actually earned them. You've known each other for 12 days and somehow you're already different from everyone else. They've never felt this way before meeting you. They can see a future with you. They miss you after 3 hours. They want to know where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, why you took 45 minutes to answer them. And at first it can feel amazing because intense attention is flattering. Somebody completely captivated by you can make you feel incredibly desirable. But the point here is this. Eventually you may start wondering, what exactly are you in love with? Because you barely know me. And that's where the attraction can start to turn. There's a difference between someone being intensely excited about you and someone attaching themselves to you before they've actually discovered who you are. You see, the suffocator doesn't necessarily fall in love with you. They may fall in love with what you represent. Companionship, security, validation, a relationship, an escape from loneliness, or simply the feeling of being wanted. So you start getting this strange experience where someone is telling you how extraordinary you are while simultaneously knowing almost nothing about you. And it can become uncomfortable because eventually their affection comes with a responsibility. You now have to keep feeding it. If you text a little less, something's wrong. If you want a night alone, they feel rejected. If you spend time with friends, they feel neglected. If your enthusiasm naturally settles down after the honeymoon period, they think you're pulling away. And this is where Greene's suffocation metaphor actually works pretty well. The problem isn't that they love you too much. It's that there's increasingly less room for you to exist separately from their love. You can't just simply say, I'm tired tonight, because that becomes, why don't you want to talk to me? If you say something like, I'm going out with my friends, it becomes, oh, well, you'd rather be with them than me? You can say, I need some space, but space gets interpreted as abandonment. And eventually you start managing their feelings before making perfectly normal decisions. And attraction suffers there too. Intimacy requires closeness, yes, but it also requires enough psychological space for two separate people to remain two separate people. Now, I would challenge Greene on one major thing. He says the suffocator behaves this way because of an inner void that can never be filled. Sounds dramatic, and sometimes something like that may be happening. But we can't look at someone who falls quickly and automatically conclude that they've made some enormous or they have some sort of enormous psychological emptiness. Some people genuinely fall hard. Some people are naturally expressive. They may come from cultures where, or they might have personalities that are much more emotionally demonstrative. Someone texting you every morning and wanting to spend a lot of time together isn't automatically unhealthy. But mutual intensity can be extremely pleasurable. If two people meet and both want to talk until 4 a.m. every night, nobody is being suffocated there. The issue begins when one person's intensity creates an obligation for the other person to match it. That's the distinction I would keep. It's not you like me too much. It's your feelings are beginning to dictate how I'm allowed to behave. And Greene includes a subtype to this suffocator called the doormat. That's the person who becomes whatever you think they want. All right? If you love reggae, suddenly reggae is their favorite music. You hate clubbing? Oh, well, I've never really liked clubs either. If you're obsessed with fitness, they're joining the gym on Monday. You say you think something politically, socially, or culturally. Funny enough, they completely agree. At first, it can feel like extraordinary compatibility. You may say things like, my God, we have everything in common. But eventually, you may notice something disturbing. There doesn't seem to be another person on the other side of the relationship. What they are is a mirror reflecting you back at yourself. An attraction often needs some difference. We need some resistance and personality. We need a moment where the other person says, no, I completely disagree with you on that. Disagreement tells you that there's actually somebody there. That said, I challenge Greene again when he says an inability to disagree automatically signals a doormat. Some people are conflict avoidant. Some are shy early in relationships. Some genuinely have similar tastes. And sometimes people accommodate because they're trying to be considerate rather than because they have no identity. So again, I wouldn't diagnose the person. But what I would do is watch the pattern. Do they have their own friends? Do they have their own interests, their own opinions, their own routines? Can they tell you no? Can they disagree with you without becoming terrified that you'll leave? Can they enjoy something you don't enjoy without needing your approval? The irony of the suffocator is that they may think, the closer I become to you, the more you'll love me. But attraction needs a little distance simply because distance allows us to remain curious about one another. And maybe the deepest point here is this. There's a difference between being deeply wanted and being deeply needed. Being wanted can feel sexy. Being needed to regulate someone else's entire emotional world can eventually feel like a job. So ask yourself, do I give the person I'm dating enough room to remain a separate person? Can they have time without me? Can they say, I just want to be alone tonight without having to comfort me afterward? Can they disagree with me without me fearing the relationship is in trouble? And if someone needs space, do I respect it or immediately try to close the gap? Closeness feels good when it's chosen. But once someone starts feeling responsible for maintaining your entire emotional equilibrium, that closeness can become very heavy very quickly. So here's the question. When does someone wanting to be close to you stop feeling romantic and start feeling suffocating? And on that note, before somebody's anti-seductive behavior has you lowering your standards and raising your blood pressure, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, more ways people somehow manage to kill attraction all by themselves. But first, a word from tonight's very necessary sponsor, Pumzempic, lowering toxic pum-pum intake one blocked number at a time.
Are you addicted to toxic women? Do you keep saying, she's different, while everybody else can see she isn't? Introducing Pumzempic, the once-weekly treatment for men who need help reducing their appetite for toxic pum-pum. Pumzempic may be right for men experiencing chronic symptoms like ignoring red flags for good sex, confusing jealousy with passion, and answering that midnight call you already know you shouldn't answer. In studies conducted at barbershops, group chats, and outside rupas at 2 a.m, men taking Pumzempic reported a significant reduction in toxic pum-pum addiction. Side effects may include sudden clarity, blocked numbers, improved sleep, restored friendships, reduced tolerance for fuckery, unexplained peace, money remaining in your bank account, and the occasional relapse after 3 rum punches. Do not take Pumzempic if you are allergic to boundaries or currently believe, I can fix her. Pumzempic does not protect against love bombing, late night, come over texts, fake emergencies, suspicious male best friends, or the phrase, I just want to talk. If you experience an uncontrollable urge to text I miss you after midnight, contact your brethren immediately. So before you go back for the 6th time because the connection different, ask your brethren if Pumzempic is right for you. Pumzempic, lowering toxic pum-pum intake one block number at a time.
So yes, that noise is for you. They may feel like they're loving full-heartedly, so you should avoid using withdrawal as a punishment, but making independence normal. Cindy says Pumzempic, rolling on the floor laughing. Yeah, Pumzempic. So as we move on, we're moving on to Greene's next type, which is the moralizer. Now, the moralizer is the person who slowly turns the relationship into a whole performance review. At first, they may seem principled, disciplined, responsible, maybe even impressive. They know what they believe, they have their standards, they have opinions about how people should behave. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem starts when their standards stop being something they live by and become something you're constantly being measured against. So it'll sound something like this, and you can tell me if this sounds too familiar. You drink too much. You spend too much. You dress too provocatively. You swear too much. You stay out late. You're too friendly with people. You post too much online. You don't read enough. You don't exercise enough. You should be saving more money. You should have handled that argument differently. You should be more ambitious. You should be less ambitious. And after a while, you're thinking, Jesus Christ, am I dating you or am I being raised by you? And that's where Greene has a strong point. Constant judgment can be deeply anti-attractive because attraction needs some feeling of acceptance and ease. You want to feel that someone sees your imperfections and they still enjoy you. The moralizer makes you feel like there's always a corrected version of you standing somewhere in their imagination. And you're constantly being compared to that person. Now that can kill desire because it changes the emotional dynamic. You stop feeling like lovers, and one of you becomes the teacher and the other becomes the student. Or worse, parent and child. And very few people want to feel sexually desirable to someone who spends half the relationship correcting them. There's also something sneaky about this type because criticism can sometimes disguise itself as concern. Tell me if this sounds familiar. I'm only telling you because I care about you. I just want the best for you. Or, I know what you're capable of. Or, you could be so much more if you just ... And sometimes it comes from a place of genuine love. If I'm doing something destructive and someone who loves me says, Alfred, this is becoming a problem, that isn't automatically moralizing. The people who love us should sometimes challenge us. But this is where I would push back a little strongly against Greene. In this part of this chapter of his book, his opening claim that morality never enters the picture in Love and Seduction is one of those Greene statements that sounds provocative but falls apart if you take it literally. Of course, morality enters relationships. Things like consent and honesty and respect matters. Whether somebody is married matters. Whether someone is exploiting another person matters. There absolutely are ethical boundaries around attraction and sex. All is fair in love sounds sexy until someone lies about being single or pressures someone sexually, manipulates them, or deliberately destroys someone else's relationship. Then suddenly we discover that no, actually, all is not fair. So I wouldn't frame the problem as morality. The problem is moral superiority. There's a huge difference between I don't think what you did was right and I'm the kind of person who gets to decide what kind of person you should be. One addresses behavior and the other establishes hierarchy. And I think that Greene also goes too far when he says that moralizers criticize because they're secretly unhappy and they want to dominate people. Sometimes that may be the case, but then again, that's mind reading. Some moralizing behavior comes from anxiety. Some come from upbringing. Some from religion. Here I go. Some from perfectionism. Some people genuinely believe that loving someone means helping them, quote unquote, improve. They may not consciously want power at all, but the effect can still become controlling. And this type can show up in incredibly ordinary ways. Let's say it's something like you order dessert at a dinner. You hear, you know how much sugar is in that? Or you put on an outfit you like. You're really going to wear that? You tell a funny story about something stupid you did years ago. Oh, well, I don't understand why you would ever behave like that. Or maybe you're laughing with friends. Well, you're very loud when you've been drinking. Now, nothing by each and every one of those things by themselves, it doesn't sound catastrophic. But imagine receiving little corrections like that 3 or 4 times a day. Eventually, you start editing yourself before they even speak. And that's when something important happens. You become self-conscious around the person who is supposed to make you feel desired. That is poison for attraction. Attraction and seduction needs some ability to relax into yourself, to flirt badly, to laugh too loudly, to say something stupid, to be a little ridiculous, to occasionally eat the damn cake without someone turning it into a character assessment. And there's another version of the moralizer that I think is especially relevant now. The person who turns every disagreement into a judgment of your character. If you don't agree with them, you're ignorant. If you don't respond the way they wanted, you're emotionally immature. If you set a boundary that they dislike, you're selfish. If you don't communicate exactly the way some relationship content told you should, you're avoidant. Now, we're not even arguing about what happened anymore. We start diagnosing one another. And that can become a very sophisticated form of moralizing. Even therapeutic language can be used like a weapon. Oh, you're not holding space for me. You're invalidating my feelings. Well, you need to do the work. Sometimes those phrases describe something real, but sometimes what they actually mean is, you're not behaving the way I want, and I found language that makes my preference sound morally superior. And that's worth watching. Because I think the strongest modern version of Greene's point is this. Standards are attractive, but judgment usually isn't. Have your principles. Have boundaries. Know what you will and will not tolerate. But if your relationship becomes a permanent campaign to renovate another human being, at some point they may start wondering whether you actually love them or whether you love the person you think you can turn them into. So here's the self-check for the moralizer. Ask yourself, do I actually accept this person, or am I constantly trying to edit them? When they make a choice I wouldn't make, can I disagree without turning it into a lecture? Do I offer advice because they asked for it or because I need them to do things my way? And here's the harder one. How often does my "I'm just trying to help" leave the other person feeling judged? If someone feels like they're always being corrected, eventually they may stop feeling loved and start feeling inspected. So checking some comments here. Samuel Samuel says, where can I get some Pumzempic for my male friends? Ask your brethren. That's what it said. Ask your brethren if Pumzempic is right for you. Sam goes on to say, the problem begins when their disagreement consistently becomes contempt, belittling, or an attempt to mold you into somebody they approve of. Yeah. He says, sometimes you need to find out why these people feel or act this way before judging their moralizing behavior. That's an important point there too. Yeah, we shouldn't be too quick to diagnose people and to put a label on them. Sometimes you really do need to take the time and have that communication and try to delve and dig and see where they're coming from. That's a really good point, Sam. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I am conscious of time, but because of my little technical difficulty and not starting on time, I'm going to take some time back. I don't have any shows coming after me, so I don't think this will be a problem. So Sandra, I do apologize. And if you want to beat me afterward, you can beat me. I'll take it. So I'll do the last one for tonight because this episode is going to be part one of, I want it to be a 2-part series. This type is called the tightwad. And the tightwad is where Greene takes something very ordinary, being cheap, and says, no, this is bigger than the restaurant bill. And I think there's something useful in that. Because stinginess, as he says, stinginess signals that there's something constricted in you. And sometimes what makes stinginess unattractive isn't the amount of money involved. It's the feeling that the person is constantly calculating what everything costs them. You go out for dinner and they're watching who had the extra appetizer. You borrow $10 and they remember it 6 months later. They buy you something and somehow you're reminded of the price 3 separate times. They help you move and now the favor lives permanently on the relationship's balance sheet. Eventually, you start feeling like there's an invisible calculator running whenever they do anything for you. That also kills attraction. As I said, generosity communicates something larger than your money. What it communicates is, I don't mind expending a little of myself for you. Now, that could mean money, but it could also mean time, or effort, or attention, convenience, patience, sharing, hospitality. Some people will spend $300 at the bar on themselves and then argue with you over $4.50. I think Greene is right that people often don't recognize this quality in themselves. Because a tightwad usually doesn't think that they're being cheap. They think that they're being sensible. So you may hear something like, oh, they charge too much for parking. Or why should I pay for that? Or you only drank one glass of the wine. Or you might hear, well, who ordered the calamari? And everybody else is sitting there thinking, Jesus Christ, like just pay the extra $7 and let us go home. And in relationships especially, repeated penny pinching can become very unattractive because romance sometimes depends on a little bit of irrationality. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying financial irresponsibility, but just the occasional willingness to say, you know what, babe, forget it. I got this. Or, I saw this and I thought of you. Or, come, I'll pick you up. Or, you've had a horrible week. I'm bringing dinner. None of those things need to be expensive. The attractive part is that somebody voluntarily inconvenienced themselves slightly because your pleasure mattered to them. But here's where I challenge Greene quite strongly. He makes a psychological leap when he says cheapness reveals something constricted in the entire personality. Sometimes a cheap person is emotionally stingy too. But sometimes somebody is careful with money because they grew up poor. Again, like Sam rightly said in his comment, we want to be very careful about just throwing labels on people because we see certain behaviors. Sometimes they experience financial instability. Sometimes they're supporting relatives. Sometimes they have debt. Sometimes they've simply decided that spending money unnecessarily is foolish. And I'll tell you what, in Cayman especially, where the cost of living is what it is, someone saying we can't keep eating out 4 nights a week, they might actually be the only sensible person in the relationship. That's budgeting. So I think we need to distinguish between being frugal and being ungenerous. A frugal person might say, that restaurant is a bit too expensive. Come, I'll cook for you. A tightwad would say, that restaurant is too expensive. You pay this time because I paid last time. For instance, there's a difference. The frugal person may not have much, but they're still willing to give something. And some of the most generous people you'll ever meet don't have much money at all. They'll cook for you. They'll bring you mangoes from their yard or whatever fruit you like, guavas, naseberries. They'll drive across the island because your car won't start. They might save you a good piece of fish when we eat fish on Sundays. They may remember that you like a particular snack and they pick one up when they see it. That's generosity. So Greene is onto something when he connects money to the broader ability to give, but I wouldn't treat spending as the test. The better question is, does this person have a spirit of generosity? Because you can spend a lot of money and still be incredibly ungenerous. Now, let me see. Samuel says, when favors show up through arguments, yawn. Well, there's also the opposite problem, which Greene catches at the end. Someone can give too much too early. The first date, an expensive dinner. Second date, a designer gift. 3 weeks later, a weekend away. Then suddenly there's a quiet expectation attached to all of it. Now, that isn't always generosity. Sometimes that's investment. And what we know about investment and people who invest is that they expect a return. Which brings us back to something we've already seen with these anti-seducer types. The problem often isn't the behavior itself. It's what the behavior is secretly asking the other person to do. Even generosity can become anti-seductive when it says, look at everything I've done for you. Now what are you going to do for me? And there's another version of the tightwad that has nothing to do with money that I actually think is more damaging. The person who is stingy with affection. You compliment them constantly, they almost never compliment you. You initiate sex, you initiate the dates, you're the one who check on them, you remember their important days, you show up when they're struggling, and when you need something emotionally, they give you just enough to stop you from complaining. That is a cheapness of an emotional kind. The person who hugs you like they're being charged by the second. Or the person who knows reassurance would mean something to you but withholds it because you should already know. Or the person who behaves as though every bit of affection they give somehow diminishes them. That can become deeply anti-attractive. Eventually, you start feeling like you're begging for crumbs from somebody sitting beside a full loaf of bread. And I think there's a deeper principle underneath Greene's tightwad. Attraction often grows around people who create a feeling of abundance. Not necessarily wealth, abundance. There's enough laughter and affection and attention and kindness and enough room for both people. The tightwad creates the opposite feeling. Everything is scarce. Every favor is counted. Every gesture has a cost. Every little bit of affection has to be earned. And eventually you stop feeling loved and you start feeling invoiced. But the balancing point matters. Generosity doesn't mean draining yourself to prove you care. I'm not saying, nor is Greene arguing, that you should bankrupt yourself financially or emotionally or physically trying to be attractive. The healthiest version is probably give freely enough that love doesn't feel like accounting, but keep enough of yourself that generosity doesn't turn into self-erasure. And here's the self-check for the tightwad. Ask yourself, do I give freely or do I keep a quiet scorecard? Sometimes the scorecard isn't even quiet. When I do something nice, am I genuinely giving or am I expecting repayment later? Am I stingy only with money or also with affection and compliments and effort and time and reassurance? And here's the uncomfortable one. Do the people I love feel cared for around me, or do they feel like everything comes with a receipt? So, guys, like I said, I am conscious of time, so we need to draw this little episode to a close. So tonight we met the first 4 people who can take perfectly good chemistry and somehow choke the life out of it. The brute pushes too hard. The suffocator gets too close, too fast. The moralizer keeps trying to improve you until you start wondering whether they even like the version they met. And the tightwad keeps such careful accounts that eventually love starts feeling like someone needs to send you an invoice. Different personalities, same result. That little spark of attraction starts flickering. And maybe that's the real lesson tonight. Sometimes attraction doesn't disappear because somebody stopped being beautiful. Sometimes you just got tired of being pressured and crowded and corrected and feeling like every little thing comes with terms and conditions. Desire needs a little room. Room to breathe, room to choose, room to miss someone, room to be yourself without someone standing over you with a stopwatch, a red pen, or a calculator. And before everyone goes home diagnosing their ex tonight, please remember, we said this from the beginning, check yourself too. Most of us have probably had a little brute moment or a little suffocator moment. Maybe you've moralized someone half to death, and some of you know damn well you've emotionally asked for that $3.75 back. So we're not condemning anyone to anti-seducer hell just yet, but we are paying attention, and we're only halfway through. Next time, we've still got Greene's other anti-seducer types, so next episode may require some protective equipment. And if this conversation has you curious, do go and pick up Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. Agree with everything he says, or disagree with half of it. Argue with the book in your head if you need to. That's part of the fun. There's plenty in there worth thinking about, especially once you start applying it to real relationships instead of treating it like some instruction manual for getting people into bed. Until next time, pay attention to what makes you attractive. But maybe pay even closer attention to the things you do that quietly make someone want to move their chair a little further away from you. Stay seductive, give people room to breathe, and please don't make someone regret finding you fine. This has been Real Talk, Love, and Lies. I'm Alfred, and until next week.
Cause real love steady, it don't need show. It move like reggae bassline, nice and slow. Real talk, love and lies. You see through all them disguise. Truth come first, we no compromise. Open your eyes, open your eyes. From Caveman Shore to City Lights. Real talk, love and me talk lies. Hold your heart, protect your vibes. It's real talk tonight.